Hello and welcome to Watch Releases Update for the week of August 4th until August 11th. Let's begin with Oris and their new limited edition called Dot Wood. It's actually not the first limited release of this watch, it's the second one. Back in 2021, Oris partnered up with CWSS to help with the conservation efforts of Wadden Sea, also known as Dot Wood. That's why this watch is called Dot Wood. It's limited to 2009 pieces. Not sure why. Maybe 2009 has some sort of significance in terms of a year. It's not a small limited release, but it's also not too large. I think if you really wanted one of these watches, you could easily get one. I like what Oris is doing with their environmental and conservation efforts and different watches that they're releasing to kind of celebrate and promote environmentally friendly practices. It's all really good to see. In terms of the watch itself, it is very similar to other Aquos models, just in a slightly different color variations. So what we see a gray ceramic bezel and this beautiful gradient dial. It sort of goes from light blue almost to dark green. It looks very attractive. I personally quite like Aquos models. This one only comes in a 43mm case diameter. I used to own a 43mm case diameter Aquos. Unfortunately, I sold that watch because it was simply too large and too heavy. That was the old model, pre-2017 model. These new models are much lighter and much more comfortable to wear. The price of this one is $3,200 USD, which I think is a fair price, but do keep in mind you're not getting Oris's in-house caliber 400, the one that has crazy power reserve. This one is still powered by the humble caliber 743 with only 38 hours of power reserve, but it is still a high beat movement. Hamilton Khaki field in a titanium case with a titanium bracelet. So what Hamilton has done here is something that I'm really excited about. They released 4 models, but really it's 2 new models in different case sizes. So there is a 38mm model and a 42mm model, and each one has 2 different dial and case colors. Both of them are titanium. One is PVD coated, the other one isn't, and both versions look awesome. I love Hamilton Khaki field watches. In my opinion, it's one of the best watches value for money that you can currently buy on the market. On top of that, I also love titanium watches because they're light and very comfortable to wear. You combine both of them into one and you get a watch like this. I'm also glad that Hamilton is releasing both versions in both different case sizes. Sometimes companies just release one color in one size, the other color in the other size, and if you have a larger wrist, well, you can get the smaller one, and if you have a smaller wrist, you can get the larger one, and you kind of have this dilemma. Here, no dilemma. If you have a smaller wrist, you can get either option. If you have a larger wrist, you can get either option. Titanium bracelets from mainstream companies are not very common. I don't know if you noticed that or not. A lot of companies that create titanium watches don't put them on the bracelets because titanium bracelets are kind of difficult to execute. I love the fact that it has a first female link, so it should hug your wrist fairly well. I also love this blue color. I'm not a big fan of PVD coated watches, so if it were up to me, I would choose the blue color with a traditional sort of metal look. I think that looks awesome. However, the all black version also looks really good. Everything else about this watch is exactly the same as the old version. Still powered by the same movement, still has a display case back. It only has a new price point. From what I read, they will be priced around 1,200 Swiss francs. So that's about what, 1,400 US dollars. However, as usual, the time will go on and these watches will start popping up on sale. I wouldn't be surprised if you'll be able to pick up one of these watches for around 700, 750 US dollars in a couple of years' time. Great addition to the Hamilton Khaki family. Really excited about this release. Moving on. Breitling Navitimer Gray Limited Edition. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this watch because it is essentially a Breitling Navitimer with a new color dial. That's pretty much it. And even this dial color already exists within the Breitling Navitimer family. Now it has black subdials instead of white subdials. I personally love Navitimers. One day I want to own one. I'm just not sure what I'm gonna go for. Probably something vintage. I like the classic blue dial versions. This watch here is of course the modern version, the 46mm version, so you do have to have a larger wrist to really enjoy it, and it's limited to only 300 pieces that will only be sold in United States. Even if you go on a Breitling's website right now, this watch is not popping up. So if you really like this watch, or if you're a hardcore Breitling collector, you can talk to your AD and probably they can order one up for you if you really are keen on it. The thing that I'm not so crazy about is the price, almost $12,000. Yes, it has a gold bezel, and yes, it's a Breitling Navitimer, but $12,000 is a lot of money, even for a limited edition. I like the old school Navitimers, what they used to be. They used to be like these $4,000 or $5,000 watches, and if they stayed around that price, I think Breitling would sell a whole bunch more of them, and I think that's kind of where these watches belong. At the $12,000 price point, I think there's so many different options below that and slightly above that this watch is a much harder sell. But hey, that's just my opinion. Alright, moving on to the next release. Longines HydroConquest GMT. A few weeks ago, Longines released GMT Zulu Time, and I said they're killing it with their releases. And once again, Longines proves to be on the roll. HydroConquest is one of my favorite lines in terms of affordable diver watches from mainstream companies. I did a bunch of videos actually mentioning this watch, and I even reviewed one probably a year ago or so, because these watches are great. They offer ceramic bezels, they offer great finishes, great movement, and all under $1,500. Sometimes you can score them even under $1,000, depending on the version, depending if you buy used, depending where you buy them. Well, now there is a GMT version added to the HydroConquest line of watches. This version is slightly different to what we've seen a few weeks ago with the release of Zulu Time. This one here looks more like a diver watch. It even has a diver style bezel. It comes in 4 different color variations with a few different bracelet options. You can go with the bracelet, you can go with the rubber strap, or even with the NATO strap. What I love about these watches is the price. Under $3,000. Once again, Longines just proves what a great value for money brand they are. The best part about this for us as consumers, in a few years, just like with the Hamilton Khaki Titanium, these watches will start going on sale, and I'm sure you'll be able to pick one up for around 22, maybe 2,500 US dollars. For that price, getting a watch with 200 meters of water resistance, a ceramic bezel, a GMT movement, comes from Longines with these looks, with these finishes, it's a no-brainer. So I'm just really happy that companies continue to release watches like this, just giving us as consumers more options. Moving on to the next release. King Seiko SJE095 Limited Edition, where Hamilton and Longines offer great value for money and offer something great for enthusiasts. You would assume the same thing from Seiko, especially King Seiko. I think King Seiko right now as a brand, because it is sort of a separate brand from Seiko, is positioning itself in between the Grand Seiko, the high-end Seiko, and just your standard Seiko. So King Seiko is somewhere in between and is priced in between. This limited edition comes in the same case as we've seen released very recently, and it is essentially the same watch as I think the watches that were released a couple of months ago, but now with a new very attractive dial. The dial is based on the looks of a flower, and you can definitely see this pattern all around the dial. Seiko really knows how to do a good looking dial. The problem that I have with this watch, it's not the finishes, it's not the case, it's not the looks of the watch. All of that is great. It's the movement. So this King Seiko is powered by the caliber 6L35 automatic movement that beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour, which is good. It's a high beat movement, but it has only 45 hours of power reserve and a stated accuracy to -10 plus 15 seconds per day. For almost $3,500, that's how much they're asking for this limited edition watch, I would expect more. I mean, it does look really nice, but for $3,500, there are so many options. Plus, from Seiko itself, you can get something like a Seiko Presage, this sharp-edged series watch, which I actually owned in the past, and those are excellent, and they actually have a very similar dial pattern. They're very similar watches, not as nicely finished as this, but they're less than a third of the price of this watch. So I don't know what Seiko is doing. If you're gonna position this watch high over your regular Presage, then give it a better movement. Give the engine to the car that it deserves. And that's what's so frustrating with Seiko, because they have better movements. And I know people are gonna say, well, hey, you know, the movement is not that bad, you're making too big a deal out of it. But listen, $3,500 is a lot of money, even for a limited edition. Yes, the dial is beautiful, but Presage watches also have beautiful dials. This sort of accuracy is not acceptable in this price point. There's so many Swiss competitors in this price point with COSC certification that will run circles around Seiko's accuracy. So if Seiko wants to offer these watches at a higher premium price point, we'll give it a higher premium movement. You have the movements, just put it into this watch. Moving on. Mido Baroncelli Chronograph Moonphase. Mido is one of those under the radar watch companies. Not a lot of people are paying attention to their releases. They had a few hits, they had a few cool limited editions, such as the Rainbow Diver, but for the most part, they're kind of staying under the radar. I think this watch here is very attractive. It's a highly complicated watch for around $3,000. You get the chronograph, you get Moonphase, day, date, and month, and all of that in a fairly attractive package. A lot of times when companies try to put all these complications into a watch and make it affordable, it comes off kind of cheap looking. Not the fact with this watch. I think it actually looks quite attractive. Yes, it's a bit on the larger side. It's 50 millimeters from one lug to another, plus it has a 42 millimeter diameter. In a watch such as this one, that diameter would really show because it's mainly dialed. There's pretty much no bezel, so the watch will look even larger on a wrist. Be prepared for that. But other than the sizing of the watch, everything else looks really attractive. I like the colors here. I like the complicated dial. It's busy, but it's not overly busy. Still okay to read. I like the pushers. And I even like the fact that they give it a display case back. When you have a movement as complicated as this, you want to look at it. I even like the integrated rubber strap. I think it looks really good. Well done, Mido. And with that, those were the releases for this week. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about this week's releases. Do you agree with my opinions? Do you disagree? Leave your thoughts below. I always enjoy reading them. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the YouTube channel for more videos like this in the future. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.